Hello Internet. In the final video for 80s Vampire Month, the eldest sibling of a single parent family is attracted to an alluring young woman, and his attraction leads him into the world of vampirism. Half turned into a vampire, he must decide between his family, his human family, and his new vampire family, and ultimately decides to align himself with his human family and fight the vampire clan that he's almost become a part of. We're going to be looking at Near Dark. Cry, little sister. Nah, it's The Lost Boys. Apart from script similarities, there's a link between The Lost Boys and Near Dark and The Exorcist. Jason Patric here, looking very pretty, is half brothers with Joshua Miller, who played Homer, the child vampire in Near Dark. Both of them's is kids to Daddy Jason Miller, whose father Damien Karras in The Exorcist. There's a bit of trivia for you. Sleep all day, party all night, it's fun to be a vampire. Of all the movies in this mini-series, this is the party movie. I'm probably just going to mark out about The Lost Boys, and very little of this will be a serious analysis of the movie, because in all honesty, a movie where Kiefer Sutherland still manages to this day, I think, to make a mullet look good is a movie that is going to be impossible to sneer at. I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if for younger generations today this still plays as cool, but for people of my generation who were into horror, this was the aspirational vampire movie. This is the movie that made you want to be a vampire. The soundtrack was fucking excellent. It still is one of the best soundtracks around there. It's just such a party vibe to the entire movie. It's kind of hard to be critical about it when I just have so much love for it. I'll try and throw a little trivia your way. Kelly Jo Minter is an actress who had practically her entire part cut out for a movie. You can see her working in the video store in the background of one of the scenes. You might know her as the asthma girl in Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. The one with the brains that Freddy sort of want to suck some face. Yeah, she's in The Lost Boys, although not really. She got left on the cutting room floor. Thou shalt not kill. Something that occurred to me while I was watching it, the antler impaling that happens to Kiefer Sutherland's David at the end of the movie. I wonder if that was a reference to the antler impaling in Salem's Lot, the TV miniseries directed by Tobe Hooper in 1979, where James Mason's character impales the Doctor, lifts him up, marches him down the corridor towards a set of antlers and impales him on that. If the scene in Salem's Lot didn't inspire the scene in The Lost Boys, it absolutely, definitely did inspire the Minnesota Shrike in the TV series of Hannibal. Brian Fuller, the creator of that show, has said as much. Whether there's some lineage there or not, it's a fantastic image. Honestly, what can I say? This is one of the most fun vampire movies ever made. If I'm putting my ultra-critical hat on, it's slightly bloodless, but in comparison to what we could have got, it's a work of absolute genius. The original script was intended to be essentially the Goonies, but with vampires. The Frog Brothers were going to be 8-year-old chubby Boy Scouts. Joel Schumacher only said yes to the project if he was allowed to age up all the protagonists and make this a teen movie. Gonna have a good time tonight. Rock and roll music gonna play all night. Talking about it being bloodless, watching it again recently, there's not much blue language in it. The scene that makes me laugh now, which I don't think you're supposed to laugh at. Remember when the Frog Brothers sneak into the vampire's underground lair and stake poor old Alex Winter, and all the other vampires wake up and all hell breaks loose? And Kiefer points at them and says, "You're dead meat! Dead meat!" Come on, where are the F-bombs? This is the slick MTV, just overly produced, packaged commodity of vampire movies. In that way, it's the 80s incarnate, because this is vampirism as aspirational. 80s era Reaganomics, aspirational lifestyle. It's the movie, like I said before, that makes you want to be a vampire. If Gordon Gekko says in Wall Street, greed is good, I am sure that if the movie carried on for any longer, Max, the head vampire, or David, Kiefer Sutherland's character, would have told us that blood is good. Say hello to the night, lost in the shadows. Say hello to the night, lost in the loneliness. What I will say that stood out for me on this most recent viewing, more so than any other previous time, is all the allusions to the counterculture in this movie. From the opening montage of what I guess now would be called the alternative scene, previously emo or goth, punk, post-punk, rock, just lots of very fast edits of kids like this, counterculture kids on the boardwalk, that really sets out its stall. And this must be all Joel Schumacher's doing, since he wanted to up the average age, since he wanted to make it about teens rather than pre-adolescents. So he really decides that he wants to ground this movie in the sort of counterculture, and all the way through, not least the poster of Jim Morrison inside the Vampires, just amazing fucking home. Who wouldn't want to live in the blasted out post-earthquake fairground ruins that they've got, right? I mean, but beyond the poster of Jim Morrison, you've got, when Michael first gets Starr's name, he makes an allusion to ex-hippie parents. So his mum, at least, and if not his absentee dad, was a hippie at one point, and Grandpa, who they go to live with, is essentially still a hippie. He's a kind of Willie Nelson type, still got his hair done in braids, growing weed outside his kitchen window. I mean, Grandpa is still right on. So there are 3 generations there of sort of counterculture of their own specific time and era. And the vampires in this movie come to embody the absolute epitome of the counterculture. Like it says on the poster, sleep all day, party all night, it's fun to be a vampire. Just without getting too highfalutin about it, doing away with absolutely all of the rules and flipping them literally on their head. We stay up at night, we sleep during the day. All of the rules of your so-called life we don't have to adhere to, we don't have to abide by. Even death, even the ultimate rule that you guys stick to, we don't have to abide by. All we need to do is take a little blood. One of the things that interested me was that whilst the vampires were being put in the position of the ultimate in counterculture, they were also being presented as aspirational, and in a weird kind of 80s way, they're almost, whilst being the ultimate rebels, they're also the ultimate capitalists as well. They're very obviously the ultimate consumers, because they consume other people. Might is right. The might is right of Gordon Gekko and Wall Street. So they live in a very uneasy space between rebellion and, weirdly, the twisted epitome of the 80s American dream of capitalism, consumerism. They're kind of like the masters of the universe, of the banking world, the yuppies. It's just that they don't give a fuck. there's very little point in me trying to be critical about this movie. I love The Lost Boys. Pretty much everyone of my generation loves The Lost Boys. Pretty much everyone of my generation who doesn't really like horror movies still loves The Lost Boys. It's a good time at the movies. It's a good time at home. You get your beers out, you get your drink on when you watch The Lost Boys. Please, for the love of God, do not play a drinking game where you take a shot every time someone says the name Michael, because that name is mentioned well over 100 times. Now that I've highlighted that to you, I'm sorry if I spoiled the movie now, because it's Michael. If I was going to invent a Lost Boys cocktail, I'd call it Sax on the Beach. Do you know what makes it for me? It's that single tear that rolls down Kiefer's cheek when he gets burnt by the sun, and it weirdly humanises him. Kiefer Sutherland is so strong in this movie. It's unbelievable. And him and Jason Patric butting heads. The whole... Who would have thought that one of the coolest scenes in a movie would be sharing out Chinese food? But it is. I still believe... Oh, I still believe... Ultimately, I'm not going to be able to tell you anything about The Lost Boys that you don't already know yourself. If you've clicked on this video to watch it, you already love The Lost Boys. You've not come to the Grumpy Andrew YouTube channel to think, should I rent Lost Boys? No, you've come to wallow in the glorious nostalgia that is The Lost Boys. And whilst some of the movies on this list now seem very dated, things like Vamp and Graveyard Shift, others are kind of timeless, like Near Dark, and this slots in, I think, with Fright Night. It is very much of its time, and you watch Fright Night, and Fright Night is very much of its time, but the stories that both of these movies tell are kind of timeless. These movies, whilst they look very 80s, sort of transcend the decade that they were created in, and are still, to this day, fairly untouchable. I love Fright Night. I love The Lost Boys. I love them for different reasons, but I wonder whether younger kids would laugh at The Lost Boys, or whether they'd just get on board with the party. I think once you get to the point where there's a muscular, oiled up, topless dude playing saxophone on the beach, you're either with this film or you're not. If you're along for the ride, if you're along for the party, then you probably can't have more fun with a vampire movie than you can with The Lost Boys. Maybe From Dusk Till Dawn. People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. So, how 80s out of 80 is The Lost Boys, given that it's got the two Coreys in it, given that the two shops on the boardwalk that we see are a comic store and a VHS rental store, given that there's a oiled up saxophonist that no one bats an eyelid. By the way, I do know who that guy is. If you want to Google saxophonist from The Lost Boys, you will actually be able to find out all about him. And that was his act, that was who he was. Be thankful he was wearing jeans from the waist down, because apparently a lot of the time on the stage it was just a G-string. How 80s is The Lost Boys? A mullet rocking, comic book store running, weird Rob Lowe poster having party out of 80. How are your noodles? Thou shalt not kill.